The Pittsburgh Steelers have one problem on the offensive line. It's huge. It needs to be addressed. There's nothing they can do about it right now, but it's a problem. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talk or anywhere you get your podcasts. Today, we're talking about Dan Moore Jr. The left side of the Steelers' offensive line, and specifically the left tackle position, has been a major concern for the Pittsburgh Steelers all season. And yes, there's nothing they can do about it. But it needs to be acknowledged that there's a huge priority to fix it in the offseason. Or at least there needs to be a huge priority to fix it in the offseason. After the game, Mike Tomlin, he did his Mike Tomlin thing. He addressed the podium on Tuesday morning after staying up all night from a Monday night game. And when he was asked about Dan Moore Jr., he said, it's football, in the National Football League, you're going to lose some downs. There is the ebb and flow, but you remain singularly focused on winning. When you do that, you don't tote bags of negative plays. That's when we ask all the guys to do. It requires a certain level of maturity, and that's something that Dan has shown since day zero, and that's why he's been such a significant contributor since day zero. Here's the thing about Dan Moore. He was a much better contributor last season than he was this season. And towards the end of last season, you started to see the flaws, but all throughout this season, you see all of the flaws. At no moment have you thought Dan Moore Jr. is a quality and capable left tackle throughout this season. He makes the rest of the offensive line look good. And I don't want to sit here and just bag on Dan Moore Jr. I think that he can be a good NFL offensive lineman if they moved him inside. That's the concern. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers acknowledge a mistake enough to change it and try and fix it? Or will they do what they do with a lot of mistakes and just let it rock until it becomes a major problem that they have no other choice than to move on from? They do that all the time. That is their go-to strategy when they screw up. They have an opportunity to fix Dan Moore Jr. He's not a left tackle. He's not fast enough. He doesn't have the power on his feet when it comes to moving backwards and taking blows from edge rushers. And he's got no speed to keep up with guys coming off the edge. If you are a speed rusher, you are going to explode past Dan Moore Jr. every single time. It's capable. It shows on every pass protection rep. The guy just doesn't have what it takes to be on the left side, but I think that's okay because he just isn't built for that. Not everybody is. If you put Mason Cole at left tackle, he's not going to play well. If you put James Daniels at left tackle, he's not going to play well. Some guys are left tackles and some guys are not left tackles. The problem is that your left tackle is the most important person on your offensive line. And the Steelers need a left tackle really, really bad. They need a guy that could come in here, secure Kenny Pickett in pass protection, and then be able to fix the rest of the offensive line. You look at it right now and you think Mason Cole has another year on his deal and he's staying. James Daniels has another year on his deal and he's staying. Chuks Okorafor is probably going to get another year of his deal. He's going to take on that $13 million cap hit. He's staying. But the left side of the offensive line can go. And I think Dan Moore Jr. makes that a lot easier because instead of having to focus on, okay, we need to replace the entire offensive line, you could just focus on, we need to find a left tackle. If you find a left tackle and you're able to move Dan Moore to left guard, that changes everything. If Dan could play left guard, which I believe he could, I think he's got the capabilities of being a very good left guard in the NFL. I think he's smart enough. I think he's athletic enough. And I think he's just competent enough to replace Kevin Dotson and not have any issues. I think he fits a guard spot way better than a tackle spot in the NFL. I thought that was a little bit apparent last year, but the Steelers didn't really have any choices. And the fact that they just chose to just keep it rocking this year is completely on them. But after this season, they got to change that. With each win, it gets harder to do that. I understand that. The Steelers are now looking at outside the top 10 in the NFL draft. Chances are they'll win a couple more games. They'll fall right about 15 to 20 in the draft, and they'll be sitting there hoping that somebody falls to them. But if they do, if somebody does, you have to replace him. And if you don't believe that you could do that in the draft, you have to do that in free agency. The Steelers don't have any choices. You can't walk into 2023 with Kenny Pickett looking to take another step in his career, a super significant step. Year 1 to year 2 for a quarterback is the biggest step. This is the, hey, I'm here. This is the NFL. I'm ready to win step. The Steelers need him to take that. He's ready to take that next year. He'll have enough progression this year. He's got a couple more games to get under his belt. He'll slowly take steps, and then next year, it's the big leap. If he's ready to do that, and then you have Dan Moore Jr. at left guard or left tackle, and the left side of your offensive line remains an issue, that puts a huge damper on any progress that Kenny Pickett is going to make from year 1 to year 2. You can't have a guy that, I mean, the only guarantee Dan Moore gives you throughout a game, and I get it, I'm bagging, and I don't want to bag, but the only guarantee Dan Moore gets you throughout the game is that he's going to have a penalty. And chances are he's going to give up a pressure, at least one. You don't want that. You want a very efficient offensive line. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, that should be first on your priority list, right above getting a cornerback, probably finding an inside linebacker, and then suiting up your defensive line. But above all of that, if you're going to look offense, you only have one decision to make, and that's, do I find a left tackle in the draft or in free agency? And does Dan Moore Jr. move down to guard, or do we replace him totally? Those are the options. Because besides that, the Steelers don't have any glaring needs on offense. Yeah, they have a little bit lack of talent from time to time. I think that their wide receivers could be better. I think that their running backs could be better. I think that Pat Freiermuth is very, very good, but you need to be able to block to be a very successful tight end in the NFL. And I think he's got to work on that. But I also think that Zach Gentry fills that void. You have a quarterback that you're starting to feel really good about. You just need to fix your offensive line. And the biggest hole on that offensive line, the only part of the offensive line that you are worried about, is the left side. The Steelers got to fix it. It's the only way that they take a jump next season. It's the only way that the offense takes a jump next season. It's the only way that Kenny Pickett takes a jump next season. It's the only way that Najee Harris takes a jump next season. It's the only way that this group as a whole says, wow, we are really good a year from now, is to go get a left tackle that you feel confident can be a franchise left tackle. It's been a long time since the Steelers have invested in a franchise offensive lineman. A long time. The first time, or the last time, that they took one in the first round of the NFL draft, David DeCastro. That was the last time they invested in a franchise offensive lineman. The best place to start is left tackle. And if you're able to move Dan Moore and you feel that he's a piece of the future here, that's cool. As long as he's not at left tackle, that's fine. Because the Steelers have one glaring need. That glaring need is significant. It needs to be addressed. It can't be addressed right now. But I think it's time we start talking about it a little bit heavier than we've been. Because if we push the narrative, maybe people within the organization start to hear the narrative. And if that's the case, change happens. We've seen it. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it with Matt Canada's offense. We've seen it with changes at quarterback. Maybe we'll see it at left tackle. And that would be huge.